Grace to you and peace from the one who is, who was, and who is to come, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Amen. We're kind of smack dab in the middle of November, so we really shouldn't be talking about Christmas, should we? But an important concern has been raised that needs to be dealt with. Apparently, Starbucks hates Christmas and Christ. I know that's true because I read it on the internet. Even better, I saw a video of a guy standing up for Christmas and Christ at his local Starbucks, and he has an offer for us Christians on how we can follow his lead in defending Christmas and Christ against those who would push them away out of our coffee drinking experience. Maybe you've seen it. It's an important message that we ignore at our Pale, but if you missed it, I have a copy.
In fact, you realize that Starbucks is allowed to say Merry Christmas to customers? Well, I decided, instead of simply boycotting, well, why don't we just start a movement? So when I'm in, I asked for my coffee, they asked for my name, and I told them my name is Merry Christmas. So guess what? Starbucks, I tricked you into putting Merry Christmas on your cup. And I'm challenging all great Americans and Christians around this great nation. Go to Starbucks and take your own coffee selfie. And then I challenge you, because I'm going to share this video so that the word gets out. Let's start a movement. And let's call it, I don't know, the hashtag Merry Christmas Starbucks. And I know that by sharing this video and getting other Christians to do it, well, I guarantee that we can get this going around the world. And Starbucks, guess what? Just to offend you, make sure to learn like Jesus Christ. Sure, any of your sword and since you read the Second Amendment, give me my gun. Anyway, please take a minute. Choose to not be politically correct. Just correct. Share the video like comments.
Oh, okay, yeah, well. Genius, I tells you, hey? I usually ignore guys like that because I can't believe that's not satire, but that is 100% sincere. But I usually don't take the bait. I usually let things like that go. Life is too short to worry about some loudmouth on the internet. And I wish I could say that this guy is just an isolated blowhard. But this video has some traction to it among a certain set of Christians, those who are outraged that a secular business in a free country won't cater to their particular religious sensibilities. It's become a thing, but it's not a new thing. This outrage is born from a widespread belief that Christianity is somehow under attack in North America. And of course, this fellow in the video, coming from an American perspective, gives his equation of the Second Amendment with Christianity a certain flavor, as does his intention to offend Starbucks employees by wearing a Jesus t-shirt, a practice, of course, right out of the Great Commission. Go ye into the world and offend people in my name. As if the baristas really care or even notice that he had this t-shirt on. But I've encountered many Christians here in Canada who share the same concern as this fellow. If you're on social media, you might know what I mean. This time of year, every year, right after Christmas Day, or Remembrance Day, you can cue it. Cue the war on Christmas hysteria, even as malls everywhere have already put up their Christmas trees, their tinsel, and their garlands. Because many Christians are offended by the term Happy Holidays as a catch-all greeting in December, since it leaves Christmas, and therefore Christ, out of the salutation. It could be acknowledged that December, let alone November, isn't technically Christmas, since Christmas doesn't actually begin until December 25th, and the weeks leading up to the 25th in the Christian calendar are called Advent, making the greeting Merry Christmas a little premature. But common culture starts celebrating Christmas at the very earliest, November 1st. However, December also hosts religious holidays and festivals from other faith traditions. Our Jewish sisters and brothers celebrate Hanukkah from December 7th to the 14th of this year. Our Buddhist friends acknowledge Rahatsu, or Bodhi Day, on December 8th. Our Muslim neighbors recognize Mawlid an-Nabi, or the Prophet Muhammad's birthday, on sundown on December 21st or the 26th, depending on what brand of Muslim you talk to, while our Wiccan confreres are observing Yule that same evening. In our multi-faith city, in our multicultural country, Christians do not own December, which makes happy holidays seem culturally appropriate. But deeper than that, squawking about Starbucks cups and whining about happy holidays make Christians look petty. It's not the real persecution that Jesus warned Christians about. It diminishes the real persecution that is happening today. Just listen to the words to the church in Smyrna, Jesus' words. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Beware, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison so that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have affliction. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. Key words: prison, tested, affliction, faithful unto death. John may be writing to the church in Smyrna, but Christians still take comfort from his warning. You may have guessed that I'm not one of those who thinks that Christians in North America are being persecuted. In fact, in the face of declining cultural influence, I think Christians in North America are being coddled. But there is real, honest-to-God persecution happening in the world. Many Christians are enduring unimaginable pain for their beliefs. Many believers are suffering horrific deaths for their faithfulness. Because according to the Guardian newspaper, Christians are facing growing persecution around the world, fueled mainly by Islamic extremism and repressive governments, leading the Pope to warn of a form of genocide and for campaigners to speak of religio-ethnic cleansing. This is the Guardian on July 25th of this year. Also, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the symbolic head of the Anglican Communion, in his Easter sermon last spring, identified the 148 victims of a Kenyan university attack in April and the 22 Coptic Christians beheaded in Libya by the Islamic State in February as evidence of escalating Christian persecution. Furthermore, a 2014 report on religious freedom in the world by the Roman Catholic organization called Aid to the Church in Need said that conditions had deteriorated in 55 countries, and significantly so in 6 countries: Iraq, Libya, Nigeria, Pakistan, Sudan, and Syria. Although Muslims also face terrible systemic persecution, the report says, and Jewish communities have also suffered increased threats and violence, Christians were by far the most persecuted faith group, according to this report. Again, according to The Guardian, Open Doors, which is a global organization monitoring Christian persecution, conservatively estimates that 4,344 Christians were killed for faith-related reasons in the 12 months up to November 2014, and 1,062 churches were attacked. It says persecution increased in 24 countries last year, with Kenya, Sudan, Eritrea, and Nigeria entering the top 10 of its country-by-country league table. North Korea has headed the list for the past 13 years. Up to 70,000 Christians are held in gulags, with tens of thousands of people banished, arrested, tortured, and or killed. And the rampant persecution of Christians in Iraq and Syria has become so frighteningly massive in scale that it made the New York Times, yes, the New York Times, ask this: is this the end of Christianity in the Middle East? ISIS and other extremist movements across the region are enslaving, killing, and uprooting Christians with no aid in sight. From July 22nd of this year. Kind of makes griping about a coffee cup seem a little small, doesn't it? And I have to point out that Christian persecution isn't a Muslim problem. It's an extremist problem. Religious persecution of any kind is the result of fanatics claiming power, and it is not representative of any enduring faith tradition. But here on this continent, the fellow in the video and those like him who are sounding the alarm if they want to confront actual religious persecution in North America, then they can confront the fact that African American churches are being burned to the ground in the southern United States at an alarming rate. They can confront the regular media harassment of Muslims that lump all adherents of that faith with ISIS or the 9/11 attackers, or who are being blamed for the attacks in Paris, which has led to violence against average Muslims who are just trying to get through their day. They can confront social media, which has become a cesspool of Islamophobia lately. And the horrific attacks in Paris and Beirut has served to stoke anger and fear against the majority of Muslims who are themselves being targeted by terrorists. They can confront the bigotry and hatred towards those who are looking to us for safe haven as they flee those whose actions they are being blamed for. A business in a free country not saying Merry Christmas to you 2 months before December 25th does not qualify as persecution. It is true that Christians are becoming a minority in North America in terms of overall population. But Christianity is still the religious majority. Canada in particular is becoming more religious as we are becoming increasingly religiously diverse. That's what happens when we welcome new Canadians to our communities. And our task now is to learn how to welcome newcomers who need our support to build better lives for themselves and for their families. And this is where we have an opportunity. We can show others the welcome that we have received from Christ. As Christians, we can remember our own biblical tradition. As Lutherans in particular, we can remember how many landed on these shores, escaping a ruined Europe following the war. Our Israelite ancestors knew something about being displaced and looking for a home, and that's why God reminded them after they were settled, said this, "For the Lord your God is a God of hosts, and the Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who is not partial and who takes no bribe, who executes justice for the orphan and the widow, and who loves the strangers, providing them with food and clothing. You shall also love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." Deuteronomy 10. I've recently been appointed chair of the Southwest Conference Refugee Sponsorship Committee, and we will be exploring if and how Lutheran churches in Calgary can sponsor up to 5 refugee families as the new federal government looks to receive 25,000 new refugees over the coming months. Sponsoring 5 refugees is doable if all the Lutheran churches in the city pool their resources. This is a tangible way we can live out our faith and provide relief to suffering people. And it also shows that while Christians may be declining in overall numbers, a trend that I think can be reversed, but that's for another day, we are strong in what we can do together. We can learn the power of being a minority. And being a minority doesn't mean that we can't have massive impact. We can have tremendous influence in our declining numbers. We can be our own movement. And if the fellow in the video wants Christians to start a movement, how about we start this movement? How about we start a movement of compassion? How about we start a movement of kindness? How about we start a movement of welcome? How about we start a movement of mercy? How about we start a movement of justice? How about we start a movement of peace? How about we start a movement of human flourishing? How about we start a movement of abundance? How about we start a movement where all are fed? How about we start a movement where everyone has a home? How about we start a movement where creation is honored? How about we start a movement where Christians are known for our love and not by our tantrums? How about we start a movement where Christians are outraged by human suffering and not by the color of coffee cups? This movement has already started. It's already in motion. It's God's movement. It's the movement that Jesus called you into. God has started a movement to end suffering. God has started a movement to bring life. And God has drafted you into that movement. God has recruited us into that movement. Now is the time to build on what God is doing. Now is the time to work with God to create the new and beautiful world that God envisions. An apocalyptic world where the forces of evil, hatred, and death have ended, and God's future of life and creation is emerging. And together, may our ears be open to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. And what the Spirit is saying is this: give life. And may this be so among us. Amen.